Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. This is the Tuesday, May 19th, 2026 episode of the Marco Dre Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. You know, yesterday I received a lot of great compliments from many different people on my monologue yesterday where I expounded on the direction of the United States and how we kind of reached the point of which we're in right now. So if you enjoyed yesterday's show, I'm really glad, and be sure to share that with other people because, again, no one is telling you the truth about the current state of America and how we got to where we are today. How we're almost like night and day from where we were from our founding. And again, I'm glad people like that and they've responded well to it. So I'm very happy to hear that. So if you liked the show yesterday, give it a listen. If you didn't listen to yesterday's show, it's a very, very good monologue, I think. So did many other people. On another note, though, let's get down to brass tacks. We've got lots to discuss today, both foreign and domestic. And you don't want to miss any of the gold I'm about to give you. I guarantee you that much. Today's election day, though, for 6 states in this midterm primary season we find ourselves in. Things are really heating up in Kentucky's 4th Congressional District. Of course, that is where we decide, well, where the voters will decide if America will remain America first in that district or if it will become APEC first and see who wins that. And of course, by that I mean who is going to be winning between Thomas Massie, the incumbent, and Ed Gallerine, the most highly anticipated race that we have probably seen in America right now. And this Newsweek article says that this primary has become more than just a local race. It's now become the most expensive House primary in U.S. history. And of course, the high-stakes proxy war over the future of the Republican Party. And, you know, I have to tell you something. I talked about Thomas Massie in yesterday's show. I think Thomas Massie is a great congressman. He's probably one of the few people I would listen to if I have to listen to somebody. And the reason why that is because I think Thomas Massie does what he's supposed to do. And by that, I mean he follows the Constitution. Now, he has a great quote. I'm going to read this to you because I want you to understand exactly who this man is. Trump is saying to everybody that he's the worst congressman of all time. He's garbage. He's this and that. Give me a break. Take a listen to this quote, though. It says, if legislators always vote with the president, we have a king. So in other words, if we have nothing but yes men, backing everything the president does, what's the point of having a Congress? If legislators always vote with the prevailing wind, we have mob rule. If legislators always vote with the Constitution, we have a republic. Ladies and gentlemen, what did I tell you in yesterday's show? I said yesterday that we have to return to being a constitutional representative republic. That's how the country was founded. We have our Constitution. We have our law of the land, the greatest document, I think, of all time. And we're supposed to follow that. That's why we have our legislators, our governors, our presidents, members of government. They swear an oath to our Constitution. They don't swear an oath to a man. They swear the oath to our governing document. That's the whole purpose of this. You are supposed to follow it. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. You have to follow that document. And Thomas Massie, to the best visibility, from what I can tell, follows that to a T. Now, you're seeing some people come out. I think Stephen Miller said, what did he not vote for? He voted for something. Didn't vote for something. And Thomas Massie, it was DHS funding. And then someone had to come in and say, no, he didn't agree with a part of this. He doesn't disapprove of voting for DHS. So what happens a lot of times, they put these bills together. They put a lot of pork in them. They're called omnibus bills. They throw all these other things in there with it. So they say, well, if you don't vote for this, you don't approve of voting for DHS border security. Well, Thomas Massie's never opposed border security. He may have not wanted something else in that bill, which again, it goes through the amendment process. They go through it again. They vote on it again in committee. Then it comes to the floor again. Then it gets passed. You've seen this time and time again. So when I see disingenuous things like that to attack Thomas Massie, I say to myself, what are they trying to do here? This is a complete smear campaign. They really want Thomas Massie gone. Why do they want Thomas Massie gone? That's a big question you should ask yourself. Why would they want someone who follows the Constitution, who stands up for Second Amendment rights, First Amendment rights? Why would they want someone like that gone? Ask yourself that question. Let's go look at some of the things, though, that he has recently supported and sponsored. This one will make sense to you listening. It says to amend the Foreign Agents Registration Act, that'd be FARA, as amended to clarify the definition of foreign principal and ensure transparency in lobbying on behalf of foreign interest. Why do we even have a lobby for foreign interest? That's my big question. Anyways, Thomas Massie wants everybody who is a foreign lobby to register. That would include AIPAC, who's trying to take him down right now. They spent at least $15 million giving it to Ed Gallerine, and they really want to get rid of him. Why? Because he doesn't just go ahead and blindly support the state of Israel. And by the way, why should that be something that an American elected member of Congress has to do? We're supposed to represent the United States, folks, not represent a foreign country or a foreign lobby. Let me just make that very clear. What else has he recently supported? Well, back in April, the No Capital Gains Tax on Family Farms Act. I think our farmers would love that. By the way, Ed Gallerine is I think he's a fifth-generation farmer, if I'm not mistaken. Surveillance Accountability Act. What have I been telling you about? The digital era, they're collecting information on us. Thomas Massie was against the kill switch in automobiles, which would be obviously very dramatic for many people. But it's a constant police state. He's against this. He's against the data centers storing all this information about us that we never gave approval for them to even take in the first place. Have we ever heard of privacy, folks? Should we go over the Fourth Amendment again? This is what he's standing for. Anyways, moving on. This should be a big win for Maha if you're a Maha lover like me. The interstate, I almost said interstate. Oh, I like steak too, don't get me wrong. The Interstate Milk Freedom Act. This is to get raw milk across state lines more easily. I think we all can agree on that. That's raw milk. That's what I drink. Best thing for you. By the way, raw butter and cheese too. Fantastic. Can't go wrong with that. The No Immunity for Glyphosate Act. So again, we're talking about glyphosate. This is the ingredient found in a pesticide called Roundup that's sprayed on lots of our crops here in the United States. It's illegal in Europe. It causes cancer, and Thomas Massie wants to expose this. So Bayer doesn't like this. This is big ag in itself. Thomas Massie opposes this. He thinks people should be held accountable if they're spraying this toxic chemical on something you're eating and it's giving you cancer. By the way, it should be banned in my estimation. So where the hell's RFK Jr. on this one? He kind of went at it for a little bit with him, and then, of course, he kind of backtracked, unfortunately. Anyways, let's look what else. We have Restoring America's Leadership and Innovation Act. We have repealed the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2013. That was under the wonderful Barry Obama. That allowed the state media to lie to you. Isn't that nice? So he wants to repeal that. Again, does it sound like Thomas Massie is not America first? Does it sound like he's not representing you or I? You know, folks, we got to understand something. Just because we don't elect a congressman doesn't mean that person doesn't represent you. Doesn't mean you can't even contact that candidate and share information with them or what have you. Now, of course, you want to speak directly to your congressional leader. But Thomas Massie is representing all of us when he does these things. Let's be very much aware of that. No Funds for Foreign Abortions Act. Again, as conservatives, as pro-lifers, we should be greatly behind this. Save Students Act, the Prime Act. I mean, the list goes on. These are all good bills. The Gold Reserve Transparency Act. I mean, look at all these things. Federal Reserve Board about Abolition Act. Let's get behind that one, by the way. I love that. Let's get rid of the Fed. To terminate the Department of Education. Trump is all about that. So, so when we say Thomas Massie is not MAGA, when he's not this and that, I mean, it's just so ridiculous. The reason why they want to get rid of him, I don't even know if Trump himself even wants to get rid of him, but the AIPAC lobby wants to get rid of him. Trump is beholden to them. Mary Mailson gave him $230 million. She's pumped another $40 million in this round of the midterms. And she wants to get her money's worth of this. And what the Israel lobby would like is for Thomas Massie to go away. Just like Marjorie Taylor Greene went away. Now, I will tell you this, Thomas Massie has not taken a dime from this pack. And as a result of this, he's now in their radar. They want him gone. They don't want to, obviously, sign up as a foreign lobby to disclose what they're doing. They don't want that. They want to work under the radar. This is what they want. And so in order to get that done, they get rid of Thomas Massie. I think it's a big cop-out. I don't like that Trump is doing this. And by the way, I've seen pictures of Trump with Thomas Massie giving a thumbs up and whatnot. So really, to me, it just seems awfully ridiculous that we're in this situation where we're going after a congressman who actually supports Americans, folks. Why would we want to be against this? This is how we want every one of our congressional leaders to be. I wish my congressman was like this. Unfortunately, my congressman's a Democrat, but we would want everybody to act like this, and they should act like this. Anyway, I want to play a little audio for you, just to lighten things up a little bit today as we watch this race unfold. And we'll probably have the results by, I think, around 9 p.m., probably later on the East Coast. I think it's around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. By the time the polls close, we'll probably have a good idea of who wins this race. But Massie was asked about what he would do should he not win this race and why he may be targeted by the president. Take a listen.
So when you win tomorrow, and then the next step is, does Trump come back, do you think, and say, hey, he's a tough guy, he's a strong guy, we'll let bygones be bygones? Or is this now the new Trump that gets even more upset because he realizes he has lost a sizable control over especially that younger demographic of MAGA?
I think Trump likes the yes men that surround him, but he doesn't respect them. He respects me. In 2020, he went against me, and I won my primary. In 2022, what did he do? He endorsed me. I think I could get his endorsement again after this race, because when I talked to him privately in October of 2024, he called me a tough cookie because he knows I don't crumble, and he called me a sharp cookie because he's so proud that his uncle went to MIT and taught there for 41 years. I got 2 degrees from MIT. Trump never forgets that. I can guarantee you, when I be the Secretary of War and the President of the United States and the entire Israeli lobby and all the billionaires and the Epstein class, they're going to have some respect for me in Washington, D.C., including the president. I told my colleagues before I left last Friday, I said, when I come back, I want you to call me the $35 million man, because that's what I've been up against, the most expensive race in the history of U.S. congressional primaries.
I really hope the people in Congressional District 4 in the state of Kentucky can see through the nonsense. That's my only hope for all of this, ladies and gentlemen. And again, I don't like to get in kind of the drama between MAGA, who's not MAGA, what's America first, what's not. All that stuff is kind of subjective to me anyways. We need to follow principles. We need to follow values. We need to follow what is right. And what he just told you, the Epstein Transparency Act that he got passed through to release these files so we can hold people accountable, that was Thomas Massie reaching across the aisle with Ro Khanna of California. Again, I don't agree with Ro Khanna on many things, but he was right on this. They was right to release this, and most of Congress obviously voted to do this. The American people want this. They want justice. They want accountability. They want to have bad people be held responsible for their awful actions, especially in the case of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. So we can look at, I can look through the rest of this article, just the people smearing him constantly, absolutely constantly, just smearing him for really just standing up for his principles and, of course, standing up for the Constitution. Who could be against that? And by the way, it's not always supposed to go our way. What do I mean by that? We may want something, for example, but the Constitution doesn't allow. So, for example, if you really like the Iran war, let's say you're just gung-ho on this Iran war. You're Lindsey Graham incarnate, God forbid. And you say, I really want to go to war with Iran. Well, we got to get congressional approval, ladies and gentlemen. We got to do that. Well, no. We don't need that. We'll just say they try to attack us. We'll go to war. We'll stay in war. And if you don't like the war, you're not MAGA. This is the stupid. People are making this argument online. It makes no sense to me. Because I don't want to go into a foreign war with a country that never attacked us, wasn't going to attack us. Now you're not MAGA if you don't support that. Folks, we've got to be consistent here as Republicans, as conservatives, as Americans. And just because Trump is having a falling out with Marjorie Taylor Greene or Thomas Massie or Lauren Boebert now, which again is completely ridiculous, it's like, I don't know, he's so used to, I think, being around yes men right now, especially in his administration. They're all yes men. Pete Hegseth, yes men. Marco Rubio, yes men. J.D. Vance first opposed the war. Now he's making concessions for the war. I mean, it's just stupid. Susie Wild, same thing. They're just telling him what he wants to hear. Not everything is going to be what you want to hear in life. Believe me. You all know this. You got to fight sometimes. You have to do things the right way, though. So, for example, Trump's tariffs. Okay, let's say Trump wants these tariffs. He really believes in these tariffs. He loves McKinley's tariffs. We talked about McKinley yesterday on the show, too. Let's say he really likes the tariffs. Okay, fine. Then Congress has to act on that. Congress, or the legislators, it's obviously in Article 1 of the Constitution. It is designed for them. They are to set the tariffs, not the president. And when you point that out to some MAGA people, so-called, who claim to love the Constitution, they get all mad at you. They say, whoa, you're not America first, buddy. Hey, Trump's winning. Okay, first of all, if Trump wants the tariffs, he can have Congress pass the tariffs. There's nothing against that. All right? And of course, we have the opportunity to tell our congressional leader that we don't want the tariff. They're supposed to represent them. Maybe we don't want the tariffs as the American people. Or we don't want the tariffs to be a certain percentage of what comes to the United States because we're heavily dependent on many goods, especially from China. And we don't want a 25% tax on goods coming in from China, say. That's the whole point of government, folks. We debate, we estimate what's going on, we analyze things, we see what's good, what's bad. We speak to our congressional leaders. Our congressional leaders speak for us. And of course, they follow the Constitution. It gets passed, then President Trump can sign it to his heart's desire. We have tariffs now. That's how the process would be legal. But then he goes after SCOTUS when they shoot it down and whatnot, and it's just ridiculous. There are checks and balances, and we have different branches of government to reflect upon that. That's how our government is supposed to work, folks. So Thomas Massie doesn't have to be a yes man. I told you yesterday on the show. He votes 91% of the time with Republicans when they're not trying to create these bloated spending bills, where they're not trying to back the Epstein class, where they're not creating these foreign wars that we shouldn't be in at all, that are completely 100% illegal. Then Thomas Massie's on board with you. Follow the Constitution. It's as simple as that. I don't know much about this Ed Gallerine guy. I know he's a former U.S. Navy SEAL. God bless him for that. Fifth generation farmer in Kentucky. Great. You know, I always back our farmers. But I'm very questionable that he's taken this money from this pact. And again, is he just going to be a rubber stamp, though? That's the big question about this. And again, I've heard from people that knew him say he's a very nice guy. I'm sure he is. I have no question about that. I'm sure most people we discuss on this program are nice people in general. I really do. But that's not what we're electing. We're not just electing nice people. We're electing people to represent us and to back the Constitution and represent the safety and security of the U.S. And that's the way it always should be, not a foreign lobby. So you have to ask yourself the question, if someone is giving you $13 million, they want something in return. Just be very, very clear with all that. So we'll see how Thomas Massie does. He's feeling good. I've also seen there was lots of support for him. Previously, there was lots of people at rallies for him in Kentucky, over the weekend especially. So it looks pretty good for him. We'll see exactly how this all breaks down later this evening, folks. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll talk about that tomorrow. I do want to go over another very, very troubling article with us. And this is a story that's been breaking out of San Diego, Southern California, my old stomping grounds. And I hate to see these things, folks. I really do. This is out of the New York Post. It says a total of 5 people now, including 2 teenage gunmen, who inscribed anti-Muslim hate messages on their weapons, are dead after a shooting at a San Diego mosque called the Islamic Center of San Diego. And this is very troubling. This is very odd to me. It really is. And I don't know how to place my finger on this one. I guess I don't really understand exactly why this took place. We don't have the information. We were told that one of the shooters, a 17-year-old named Kane, what is his name? Kane Clark, I believe is his name. Yep, Kane Clark. An 18-year-old Caleb Velasquez. were the two suspects in this case. And it's very odd. The shooting took place outside the mosque, killing three people, excuse me. One of them was a security guard. But then they retreated into a vehicle. They drove, I guess, down the street. Someone else was fired at from the vehicle, allegedly. And a man doing landscaping work. And then the vehicle, I guess, had stopped in the middle of the street, and gunshots were heard again. These were determined to be self-inflicted gunshot wounds, so they committed suicide in the car. And it's very odd to me that something like this would take place in such a manner. The mother of the 17-year-old, I guess, had called the police because her son was missing, said that the car was gone and her weapons were gone. So clearly this was something that was probably absolutely premeditated. We don't know exactly what caused this or why this was the center of attack. But they were saying that the weapons had, I guess, anti-Muslim phrases on it. I think the words hate speech were written on one of the weapons itself. So this is, again, is very, very strange to me. What they approached the building, shot people, and left? I don't know. This just seems very strange to me. I don't really know what to make of all this, that a 17 and 18-year-old would think that this is fine to do. But the mother allegedly believed that her son was suicidal. So then why are you not locking up your guns better? Why would they have access to that? That's the first thing that comes to my mind. And shared that several of her weapons were missing. This is when she called the police, as well as her vehicle. Now, the mom said that her son was with a companion and that they were dressed in camouflage. Yeah, so clearly this was premeditated, this attack. We don't have the information from the suicide note as of just yet. Everyone was evacuated from the building. There's a child center inside, so all the children inside were safe. No children were hurt or physically injured by what took place. But they are saying that the security guard played a pivotal role in assisting what could have made a much worse situation. So perhaps they exchanged gunfire with each other and then they fled the scene because they saw that he was armed and probably thought that some other people were armed. I don't know what their thinking was. I don't know why people would do this at all. But we have also footage from the scene taken by a helicopter showing that at least one person in a tactical vest, presumably the security guard who was killed, was lying face up outside of the Islamic Center. So clearly it looks like they approached the building. It looks like they were probably met with resistance, and then the shooting transpired, and then they fled the scene. I don't understand why they would shoot at a landscaper, but I don't understand why they would do this in the first place. And then I guess they decided to take their own lives. And that's a very big tragedy to see two young people, by the way. I don't know, folks, I don't know about you, but when I was 17, I wasn't thinking about doing anything like this. I never have. But why is this the focal point of young children? And they're barely adults yet. I mean, this is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And we wish these things would never happen. But this is obviously a community that is devastated now by what has taken place at this Islamic Center in San Diego. This is the biggest, I've been told it's the biggest mosque in San Diego itself. And good work on the police, of course, for their impressive response time. I mean, they got to this center within moments to secure the building, and of course later determined that it was no longer needed to be locked down and that the problem had been neutralized. So good on them. But I don't have the answers to this. Why this evil exists in the world? Why the hatred exists like this? What their motives were to do something like this? I mean, you would think that a 17 or 18-year-old in Southern California in the end of May would be out having fun, enjoying the weather. I mean, San Diego has the best weather in the world, and you're out here doing this? It also speaks to mental health as well. The mother believed her son was suicidal. Well, is he getting help? Are you helping him? Are you assisting him in any way to make him feel better? I mean, what is the response to this? I mean, we see the youth, I guess we'll say, act in a lot of irrational ways in this country, more so now than probably ever. I mean, I've never heard of this kind of stuff. I've never heard of this stuff before. Only till much very recently, we hear these attacks from very, very young children where they're going out and doing these heinous crimes. In Austin over the weekend, we saw the same thing. We saw 3 teens, yeah, there's a word again, teen youths, right? That's how they describe them. Teen youths going out and shooting from a car that they had stolen. Yep. I mean, you never heard of this kind of stuff before. Can you go out anymore? And I say this to you again, back on the culture. This is what we talked about on the program yesterday during my monologue. I said, we are a nation of Christian values. The nation's based on those Christian values. You cannot get away from that. That's how the nation was set up. And as we move further and further away from Jesus Christ, obviously, we move away from that where we think violence like this is okay. In any situation, too, by the way. Could be a synagogue, could be a church, could be anything. Doesn't matter. Could be a school. To act in such a violent way towards your fellow man just shows you how far detached some people are from Jesus Christ. And I think we need Jesus now, ladies and gentlemen, more than ever. And that's why I was happy to see President Trump speaking. He does these readings from the scriptures sometimes. And I say to myself, this is great, but we need to act like this as a nation, as a leader. We need to act in the words of Jesus Christ. Not just say the words, live the words, ladies and gentlemen. And I think a lot of people are understanding this too. And that's why we're seeing a lot of young people coming back to the church right now. Thousands across the United States, I know, over Easter weekend were either baptized or received the Eucharist or confirmation for the first time. Thousands across the country. And these are numbers we haven't seen in decades. So it's telling me one thing. People, especially young people, they're very much hungry for the truth. For the meaning of why we're here. And I think they're finding that message in Jesus. And I can only pray that they stay with the church and they attend Mass or Christian services, rather. And we come back to that point in America where it was a very much religious country. Religion was a backbone in the society. And you saw this. And the push away from it has not resulted in a better America. Look where we are today. Again, you could go out and look at where we are today. Look at the fabric of society just being ripped apart. And a lot of it has to do with the lack of the family structure. Again, I told you it's a very, very big problem in this country. When you have no family structure, and I don't know what these two young men's their family structure was at all. It doesn't sound very positive to me. But we could talk about other things too. Drug use. We talked about that yesterday. What's leading the mental health issue with these children? Well, again, I never, growing up, knew anybody that would behave like this. It'd be unheard of. But this is where we are today. And again, I said this to you just a short while ago. We need to come back to Jesus, folks. We need a coming back to Jesus moment. In our leaders, to be honest with the American people, not just wear the cross, not just give you the smile or read you the scripture. Live it. That's the way it should be. Live it. Have it be a part of your life. And reject the things that do not exemplar Jesus. I think we'd be a much better country, don't you? I think you agree with me on that one. And since we're in California, folks, let's stick with California for just a minute. I want to have you stay with me on this matter because it's very, very crucial. And this is out of Just the News. It says, despite the evidence to the contrary, liberal voting activists have spent years minimizing cheating concerns and portraying those who want to investigate such problems as election deniers. But the Justice Department, the FBI, and Homeland Security are now systematically exposing the election fraud from non-citizen voting to ballot box stuffing schemes that are turning the table in epic fashion. Now, this is very, very, very telling to me. And by the way, I used to live in California, so I know pretty much all about this. But the latest strike came on Monday when a longtime voting activist in California named Brenda Lee Brown Armstrong, 64 of Marina Del Rey. Very, very nice area, too, by the way. She was charged. She was charged and she reached a deal with the federal prosecutors to admit to illegally paying homeless people to sign election petitions and paying them to register to vote in a 2 decades-long scheme that allegedly leveraged the Democratic-run state to have this lax mail-in voting scheme system that they put in place there during COVID, which was completely ridiculous. which sends ballot forms to everybody, whether they ask for it or not. So think about this. You have roughly 39 million people living in California, and you're going to send ballots to every one of them? I mean, it's just ripe for fraud, and they understand this. The Democrats know this. The more ballots floating around, the more ballot harvesting they do, which again means someone can come to your door, knock on it, and say, oh, I'll take your ballot for you. Sure, I'll make sure it gets to where it's going. And of course, you have no way to confirm if it gets there or not. You don't know what they're going to do with that ballot. Maybe just give them your ballot, right? They did that too. Oh, you don't want your ballot? We can take it for you. How do I know they're not filling it out? I mean, this is part of the ridiculousness of California's voting. Again, this is why they like it, because it favors them. But not only is this very crucial and a turning point for voter fraud, and by the way, I've said many times before that Trump should obviously do a forensic audit of the electronic voting machines in states like California, for example, where the fraud is rampant. I mean, I don't think we can deny this at this point. But this case is so much like many others in many other blue states, too. So why are we not going to these blue states where you don't have to show an ID, where you don't have to show your legal status to vote? California's trying to make that something now. Why would we not look into this and say, how do we know who's voting? How do I know that Mr. Gerace is going into his precinct and voting and his vote counts? That's what we should be asking ourselves here. And Harmeet Dillon is doing a great job with this. She's the ones that's obviously prosecuting and looking into this. And this woman was doing things, for example, she's going down to Skid Row in Los Angeles. Lots of homeless people live on Skid Row. Offering them money to fill out forms. Even offering to allow them to use her own address because they don't have one. And without a legal tender, you can't vote. So this is what this woman was doing for quite some time. And remember, these ballots get pushed out. So is everyone that's putting her address down is living there? Are these ballots just showing up to her house? She's filling them out and turning them in? I mean, this is how deep the rot is in California. Certainly nothing we should take very, very lightly. So, I mean, we can look through the rest of this article. There's so many different things here. I mean, just going from state to state. Obviously, people getting charged in other states with the similar types of crimes with illegally voting in federal elections, making false statements while applying for U.S. citizenship. All these things are taking place. And many people are looking at them and saying to themselves, how are we allowing this? I mean, this is why we have to get the SAVE Act passed. I mean, it should already be existing law that you shouldn't be a foreign national and are voting in a federal election. You have to be a citizen of the United States. But this would ensure that states right now, in 2026, clean the voter rolls out. Clean the voter rolls out. Make sure that you verify who is registering to vote. Make sure they're a legal citizen. Everyone should have a real ID by now, right? They have to go through that rigmarole to get that done and pay for it. Okay, fine. They have to show proof that they are who they say they are and that they're a U.S. citizen and that they can be identified as living at such an address of which they registered for. And I'll go a step further, and I've said this to you in the past as well. What should be done in today's election system, everyone should obviously go to their precinct. They should show an ID. They should sign off on it that they are who they are. They get a copy of their ballot. The precinct in which they are designated to vote in keeps the ballot, of course, but you have a carbon copy of how you voted. And when you look back at the election results, you should be able to either go online and check it. And let's say I'm voter number 65 at such and such precinct and whatever city I'm in. I should be able to go in and say, okay, I'm in this precinct and in this county. Boom, click on it. Oh, good, here I am. Voter number 65. How does voter number 65 vote? Let me see. And let me see how it adds up to everybody else's. Oh, look, I'm the 50th person that voted for President Trump in this precinct so far. Great. Wonderful. See how my vote adds in for the U.S. Senate. Did I vote for Adam Schiff? Of course I didn't. Who did I vote for? I voted for somebody else. I can't even think of who it was. It was a baseball guy. He was a good candidate, though. Oh, I forget his name now. Anyways, but you see what I'm saying here. Who did I vote for congressional leader? Who did I vote for state senate and state assembly and for this ballot initiative? You get to see how your vote tallies in too. And if everyone can go online and do that and confirm that their vote was cast, and that if something is wrong, you say, wait a minute, this is how I voted. Voter 65 didn't vote for Kamala Harris. Voter 65 didn't vote for Adam Schiff. They voted for Steve Garvey. See, I got his name right. I remembered after all. A Dodger, true and true. Anyways, you see my point here. And I think if we did that in every single state to ensure that we have voter ID laws, that we're not having illegal aliens just coming into this country and voting because, hey, I got a driver's license now. It's ridiculous. We've got to stop this. But the Democrats want to ensure this. And you know that's true because governors like my former governor, Gavin Newsom, signed into law a bill that said you don't have to show an ID to vote. In fact, it's illegal for you to ask for it because Huntington Beach, California wanted to do this. And Dave Min, good old Dave Min, a schmuck through and through. How he got into Congress, I have no idea. Well, probably because he did something like this. And they actually made it illegal when he was a state senator to show an ID at your precinct. So Huntington Beach wanted to lock this down and say, you got to show an ID. You're not going to cast any ballots if you're not going to show an ID. And Gavin Newsom said, no, you can't do that. You've got to let anybody come in. Doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm this person. Folks, we got to get a grip on this. John Thune needs to get this through the Senate. I don't care what he has to do. He's got to get this done. We need to have election integrity in this country. We know the Democrats have cheated in this. We're looking at it right now. We can look at things like the 2020 election. We can look at the voter irregularities there that everyone sees right in front of their eyes, and they're telling you, no, don't look at that. Don't take a look at that. Just close your eye. Yeah, Joe Biden won. Okay, all right. We need to have voter ID laws. Through and through, we need to have election integrity laws in place. We should be forensic auditing these machines, which we can easily do. And this would ensure that our elections mean something. But when people think our elections don't mean anything, when they believe that cheating is just going to be the way it is, nothing's going to change, then we have problems in our country. And this has got to stop. So I want the SAVE Act passed. I think most people, Democrat, Independent, Republican alike, want this passed. Like 80% of the country wants this. And yet we have our senators just sitting there going, well, we just don't have the votes for it. Then put it to a vote. Let's see who didn't vote for it. Let's see how that works out for them. Let's get behind this. Thune, you're the leader. Let's get this initiative moving. Because what the hell else is the point of this if we don't have a country with election laws? We don't have a country. I mean, we have countries in South America the size of, Maine, probably smaller than that have election laws. They have to show an ID to vote. I mean, this is the stupidity of this country. We talk about how the country's been destroyed. This is one of the reasons why, folks. Follow the Constitution. Follow the rule of law. Follow election integrity. That's all I have to say on that. Oh, by the way, this is out of the Associated Press, and I'm switching topics here for just a moment. And this one's interesting to me. It says here that, well, it looks like Trump is now going to be pushing for a new $1.776 billion fund now to pay for individuals who believe they were politically targeted by the federal government. Now, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche on Tuesday said that he would not rule out the possibility of putting this forth. And he said he also wouldn't rule out the opportunity for those that, it says here, who carried out violence during the January 6, 2021 riot at the U.S. Capitol will be considered for payouts also for this. So I'm assuming he means people that were wrongfully convicted of carrying out violence that day. Of course, the 1,200 people that were rotting away in a solitary confinement cell in D.C. because they were in D.C. that weekend. Okay. Now, when pressed by a congressional hearing over whether those who assaulted police officers would be eligible for compensation from the Anti-Weaponization Fund, Blanche then responded that all people can apply if they believe they were a victim of weaponization. So obviously, I don't think if someone was breaking the law, they should be compensated for that. That's something totally different. The acting attorney general also refused to say whether or not he would direct those responsible for deciding who received payments, a commission whose members he is tasked with appointing, to restrict funds from those convicted of violence. Now, First of all, what I have to say about this. Number one, if someone had their rights taken away, if their rights were trampled. So, for example, on January 6, 2021, if they were thrown in prison without due process, were accused of doing something they did not do, and they were rotting away in a jail cell, okay, you compensate those people. They had years taken away from their life. I understand that part. But again, if someone is wrongfully targeting you, for example, if the DOJ was going after you, if you're a mom going to a school board meeting, does that mean you're just compensated millions of dollars? If you got a knock on the door from the FBI, or let's say you're a pro-life activist, and you get a knock on the door from the FBI, does that mean you get money now from them? What if you're like me? What if during COVID, for example, you were like me and good old Meta, they decided to censor your speech, maybe take down your account, maybe shadow ban your account. Does that mean I'm compensated for some of this money in this 1776 fund now? And how far are we going to go with this? If we were targeted by the government, because clearly that was the great Anthony Fauci, right? The little Fauci, right? The little leprechaun Fauci himself. Does that mean I'm compensated now because he told Mark Zuckerberg to make sure he silences and censors people, stealing away my First Amendment right to speak freely on my own platform? Does that mean we could have this? Am I rightly to get compensated for this? How much, by the way? I mean, so that's the question at hand too. How much money are we able to have compensated to us? And I think that's a very key point here. How far are we willing to go? How much harassment from the government do you need to have in order to be compensated for this? Or is this going to be something for President Trump and his cronies? That's another thing I have to ask here, too. We know President Trump has sued a couple people in the press for comments they made about him. And again, by the way, if he wants to sue them for defamation, that's fine. There's plenty of it, too, especially in his first term. But we've got to ask ourselves the question, are people going to be abusing this now? Now, Blanche has gone on to say that it's not just specifically just for Republicans. It could be anyone that has been abused by the government. Okay. And what if you wrongfully convict somebody then? Does that mean they're able to say they've been a victim of weaponization? I mean, what are we looking at here? You have to look at people targeted specifically for their beliefs. So in other words, if you were a parent going to a school board meeting during COVID saying, why is my kid looking at a textbook or a school book in the library that says, LGBTQ, XYZ, WTUV themes? What about that? Why is my first grader looking at a book like this? Why is this appropriate? Or why is my kid learning about this on Zoom when they should be in the classroom, by the way? Why are they hearing about socialism and communism and about this and that and, things like that? And then, of course, you get a knock on the door or you get investigated by the DOJ. Why is this happening? And so the question remains, how far are we willing to go on this? Now, obviously, I don't think people who are convicted of violence, I think what they're saying here will not obviously be entitled to these funds. But I'm just curious to know how far they're willing to go on this. And where are they going to allocate this money from all of a sudden? Don't they need to go through Congress, ladies and gentlemen? Or are they just going to we have a $1.8 billion fund now, a slush fund, that we're going to dish out to people, especially, where are we going to get this money from? The taxpayers going to pay other people for this now? What I would like to see Todd Blanche do is go after these people. Go after people that have stomped on your rights, trampled over your rights, knowingly and wrongfully convicted people of things of which they didn't do, or targeted them directly. That's what I would like to see them. People should be held accountable. Not the government, the government's going to pay you money now because, you had the IRS coming after you. I think a lot of this comes forth with President Trump's recent $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS for leaking his tax returns. Now, again, that's between Trump and the IRS. But I think he's got to go through Congress, folks. Don't you agree with this? Shouldn't our constituents know exactly what's going on with this $1.8 billion? Where are we going to get this money from? We're broke. We're going to have to borrow $2 trillion this year just to have the government function as is. Where are we going to get almost how much money is it? It's $2 million or $2 billion? Let me look at this again. No, $2 billion. Yeah. Where are we going to get $2 billion from? I mean, we've got to be aware, folks, of, this sounds nice, but where are we going to get this money from? And the only way you get more money, folks, is if you tax the people or you take it away from something else. Roads, bridges, schools, healthcare, you name it. So while it sounds nice, while it sounds like we're getting justice, where is the justice? Where is it? And who's going to be eligible for this? That's the next big question we have here. All right, folks, I think it's time we could move on to the war in Iran. Let's take a look at this. And by the way, I don't want to make your head explode here, but isn't this getting nauseating from the president? Isn't this just nonsensical at times? Now, Trump announced this yesterday afternoon after I did my show, and I'm watching, I think I was watching Fox at the time, and I hear this, and I'm shaking my head going, what is going on here? Why are we dealing with this? President Trump says that he has canceled strikes on Iran planned for Tuesday, once again citing progress towards a deal, which how many times have we heard this, to end the war that he has stalled negotiations on before. Let me ask you this, though. I heard this and I just shook my head completely because I said this is completely false. We're moving close towards negotiations and you were going to bomb them because it was just taking too long? Now, Trump's announcement on Monday on Truth Social came a day after he warned Iran that to get moving fast or there won't be anything left of them. So I'm assuming he was referring to the entirety of the Iranian people and, of course, their country, which is the size of Western Europe, in case you didn't know that. The president then said the leaders of several Gulf states had then requested that he had held off on the planned military attack because serious negotiations are now taking place. A deal will be made. Now, again, I have to ask you, if the Iranians are in talks or if we're close to having an agreement, why would you plan to bomb them? Is this more bluster again coming from President Trump? Well, we were going to bomb you, but we decided not to. So you better get going. You better make sure you get that deal the way I want it done. Otherwise, there's not going to be anything left of you. Haven't the Iranians had enough of this garbage? I mean, say what you will about the Iranian government. But this going back and forth, to me, seems, again, absolutely ridiculous to a very steep degree here. How many times are you going to say these types of things where, you better make a deal fast, there's going to be a glow over Iran, which, again, I don't know if he's indicating he would use nuclear weapons or not. The Iranians have made their position clear. They really have. And again, I say this to you because I follow this very, very closely. But Iran is not going to be phased after, 90-day barrage of missiles hitting their cities and even killing civilians. And it's not causing them to cave on this. We've got to understand this. They're not capitulating to President Trump. And I think he's getting frustrated with that aspect of it. They've made their 14 points known. He's come out and said, well, I read the first line and I threw it away. Well, again, are you serious about these negotiations or not? You didn't read any of what they wanted? The country that we cannot defeat? I mean, we got to call a spade sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, and we're not beating the Iranians. That's just the crucial point of it. We haven't opened up the Strait of Hormuz. It's still shut down new ships that are helping and aiding and abetting the United States from several of these Gulf states. And by the way, when has President Trump ever taken orders from several of these Gulf states? You're telling me he's going to listen to Mohammed bin Salman over his own instincts? I mean, if you want to believe that, folks, you can believe that. I just simply don't believe that. I know they don't want this war, though, because they know exactly what's going to happen. The Iranians have made it clear. Okay, hit us again. We will continue striking your oil depots. We'll maybe even strike some of your desalination plants because you've already targeted ours. And let me just be very clear. Right now, it's about 120 degrees in the Persian Gulf. It's very hot. It's abnormally hot there. And without the oil, without the means to fire up your air conditioner, it becomes a very rough place to live. And as a result of that, you're going to have a lot of people leaving that area. Well, these countries don't want that to happen. And so maybe there was some pushback from them, but do I think they made that final decision for Trump? I do not. I really don't. Now, President Trump, on multiple occasions since this war between, obviously, Iran and the United States and Israel, He suggested that the war is coming to an end, that we're in talks. How many times have we heard this? They're in talks. They're going to make a great deal. We're going to get everything we want. Again, the Iranians have submitted a revised 14-point proposal to Pakistani mediators. They did this on Monday. The Iranian state-linked media has reported upon this. But they've made it clear, and by the way, I've looked at President Pezeshkian saying, we're not going to bend the knee to this. We're not going to do that. They've made this line in the sand, and they're not going to cross it. Now, Trump says there's disagreements around the Iran nuclear program, the Strait of Hormuz. Listen, they're going to control the Strait of Hormuz. Moving forward, they will have a toll system to utilize it. That's just the way it's going to be, folks. It's not international waters. I've explained this to you time and time again. Anything 12 miles out from your shores is your territory. The Omanis control the other half of it. Well, it's only 21 miles. It's not that far. So they're going to control. The Omanis are on board with this. Okay, we'll make a tariff system, or a toll system, rather. We'll collect money. We'll divide it up amongst ourselves. Sounds good, doesn't it? And you'll pay in the rial. You'll pay in the Chinese yuan. China loves this idea. It makes their currency much more desirable. And what does Trump get from it? The biggest part about this is Trump gets nothing of what he wants from this, because the Iranians are not even going to talk about the nuclear program until these 14 points are met. Now, you can agree with me on that. You can disagree with me on that. But that's the position they're taking. They are not going to cower in fear over this. And if you think the Iranians are not ready, they're anticipating right now that the United States is going to further escalate the situation. They will attack again. And they're ready for it. Iraqi's come out and said we've got 120% capacity of the arms we had from the start of this war. So not only since the start of this war do they have the necessary stockpiles, but they have the capacity to continue to build more in this time frame. We don't have the capacity to do that here in the United States. So the tensions are high, the tensions are mounting, and President Trump, for some reason, listens to people like the Lindsey Grahams of the world. I don't understand this. His golfing buddy. I don't know why you would even associate with this creep, but nonetheless, he was on Meet the Press over the weekend, and listen to what he had to say. And by the way, Trump is getting an earful of this all the time.
So you're calling for strikes on the energy infrastructure, Senator?
I'm calling to hurt this regime. If you do the same old thing, you're going to get the same results. Hurt them more. Maybe they'll make a deal if you hurt them enough. But right now, I think they're trying to wait us out. I think they're playing games. And in the words of the president, I think they're crazy. I think he's right.
Okay, they're crazy. Okay. Okay, Mr. Graham, who's wanted this war for God knows how long. You're going to start striking their energy infrastructure, which would be a war crime for President Trump if he were to go ahead and do this. This is what we become now? Anyways, he continued on. Take a listen again. Again, you're talking about crazy. This guy's delusional.
The president's had it with moving the goalpost. You get a deal, the next day they wake up in the president's word. It's like we never had the conversation. So what happens next? I think we hit a wall on deal making. I would encourage the president look at reducing Iran's military capability even further. They've been dramatically weakened, but they're still targets that could weaken them more militarily. And I would also keep the embargo on to weaken their economy. And I'd let the Iranians know if you keep terrorizing the region, Cargill, which is your source of revenue, will be in play. I think that would be the smart next play. You can't pursue a deal more than the people on the other side want a deal.
Maybe Lindsey Graham needs to start listening to this show. Kark Island is not the only location. It's not their only oil terminal. They've got 8 of them. Now, maybe they're the largest oil depot for them to export oil onto oil tankers. But they've got other means to do this. Again, the Belt and Road Initiative. They've got now 6 different transport ways into Pakistan, which can then go into India and Southeast Asia. They have the Caspian Sea to the north, where they can get any type of resource or commodity to the Russians. I mean, so they have other options. And by the way, it'll be even quicker now if they start using the railway going into China now. So they don't have to spend the 30 days trip that it has to take to get into the South China Sea to them. Okay, so when he said, well, if we just take Kirk Island, well, again, how are you going to take Kirk Island, genius? How would you take Kirk Island? How are you going to do this? You're not. You're not going to take Kirk Island. How are you going to put Marines on Kirk Island, first of all? They'd be under barrage of drones and missiles from the coastline there. What are they going to do then? How are you going to get them resources? How are you going to get them out of there? Let's just be very much aware of what's going on. We have no way to hold Kirk Island or take Kirk Island, and I don't think Kirk Island would even be something that would be that detrimental to the Iranians. Okay. So Lindsey Graham is so far divorced from reality. Again, I don't even understand why he's on these talk shows. It's not going to work. And by the way, if we thought that would work, we would have done it already. You wouldn't be asking for a ceasefire if you thought taking Kirk Island would be the end-all, be-all. And as a result, folks, we see turmoil ahead of us. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at where we were over the weekend. I'll cover this very, very quickly. I got a couple articles. We only got about 5 minutes remaining. I want to get through all this. The Washington Examiner had this piece out over the weekend saying that drone strikes started a fire outside of a UAE nuclear power plant as Iran war ceasefire was tested. Now, there were discussions that this was coming out of Iran. Iran was attacking the UAE. Now, let me just quickly state this to you. If you want the war to start up again, which the Israelis desperately want, they want the United States to kick up the war. They want that regime change. They want the Iranians to be weakened. If they wanted to make this look like it came from Iran, it wouldn't be impossible. The New York Times published an article a couple days ago that you should all be aware of. It says, in the Iraqi Desert, 2 Israeli outposts were kept secret for months. So that means the Israelis spent over a year preparing a covert site inside Iraq for its operation against the Iranians. This is what regional officials had said, and then Iraqi officials later confirmed their existence of a second base after finding the first one. So that means if they wanted to make it look like, or stage, that this came from the Iranians, it wouldn't be that difficult to do. And we know that Netanyahu is very much intertwined with what's taking place in the UAE now. He's visited the UAE. It could cause, obviously, the impression that the Iranians are now attacking the Gulf Arab neighbors of the United States. Anyways, that is taking place. And again, folks, I told you before, never count out any false flags here, especially in a time where it looks like we're dwindling down here. I still think we're going to attack. That's my take on it, probably in a couple days. That would be my position if I were a betting man. Anyways, again, I don't mean to startle you. And again, before we direct our focus onto my last issue, our oil, let's look at this really quick. It says Russia and Belarus are now staging joint nuclear weapons drills. Isn't this wonderful? They're now staging these joint nuclear weapons deals. They did so on Monday. The Russians deployed their Oreshnik, their latest of their hypersonic nuclear-capable missiles, to Belarus last year, upping the stakes in its rivalry with the NATO military alliance because, again, Russia knows that they're at war with NATO with this war with Ukraine right now. And as the Ukrainians are attacking residential districts inside of Moscow right now, yep, that's happening, they're testing out more of their ability, what they can actually do. So, again, last year I told you, well, not last year, a couple months ago, I said the end of the New START treaty agreement in February was going to be detrimental. I said this is going to allow the Russians to advance their technology even further. Now, we don't even have hypersonic missiles. So why would President Trump decline to extend and, again, limit the capacity that the 2 largest nuclear powers can have? And again, it goes back to where he was with the JCPOA when he ripped that up back in 2018, 2019. This allowed the Iranians to do whatever the hell they wanted. They weren't binding to any legal terms anymore. So if they wanted to enrich and build a bomb, realistically, they could have done that. Now, they're still a part of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. But it was allowing them to enrich uranium to a higher level. And obviously that looks like they're maybe building a bomb, even though they said they weren't going to build a bomb, and they haven't built a bomb, and no intelligence has shown that. But this looks bad. And this looks bad here too now. Because now you have the Russians now having intermediate range missiles that can fly between 500 and 550,000 kilometers. Yeah, I don't think we want this, folks, did we? And by the way, this Oreshnik, which has multiple warheads on it, can hit speeds up to a Mach 10. That means it can travel 10 times the speed of light. And it cannot be intercepted as well. And several such missiles used in a conventional strike could be very devastating, even possibly more devastating than a nuclear attack itself. So why do I tell you this? Because in times like this, when we're talking about Iran having a nuclear weapon, why would we want to not have any type of treaty now with the Russians? Why would we not want this? We're allowing them now to advance their weaponry. Makes me shake my head, folks. It really does. It really does. Oh, by the way, just before we end today's show quickly, I want to tell you this. This out of Reuters says the IEA chief now warns commercial oil inventories are depleting rapidly with only a few weeks left. Yep. Saying on Monday, with only a few weeks left due to the Iran war and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz to shipping, well, it's only closed to some ships. There's other ships that have been freely able to move. Birol, I believe is his name, who was the head of the IEA, is now saying that the Group of 7, the financial leaders, are meeting in Paris and told reporters the release of strategic oil reserves has added some 2.5 million barrels of oil per day to the market, but said that these oil reserves are not endless. Of course not. And of course we know Joe Biden, the wonderful Joe Biden, started to deplete ours, did he not? And now what are we looking at here? Yeah, we're looking at we have no oil left in our strategic oil reserves. Oh, God, folks, it's just getting worse and worse. We're seeing things like demand for diesel, fertilizer, jet fuel, gasoline increases. All this is going away soon. It's going to be very, very devastating very, very soon. So don't forget I told you that, folks. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for you today. Thank you again for being here. As always, I appreciate you. Make sure you're staying prepped. Food, water, medicine, fuel, money, tools, anything to be self-sufficient. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy. God bless.